to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, February 27th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. But before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that being said, let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So something that I touched upon a little bit yesterday, and that is the Chiefs are going to be working on a new contract extension for head coach Andy Reid, so we'll talk about that. We'll also get into A.J. Brown's recent comments, him shutting down any trade rumors because there was some speculation. I mean, there has been speculation on that if he wants out. So we'll talk about that. We'll also get into DJ Moore actually speaking out on the Justin Fields, trade rumors. We'll talk about what he had to say. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about the Saints reworking Derek Carr's contract and what that means going forward for the Saints. So with that being said, let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the Chiefs working on a new contract extension for Andy Reid. So, I mean, the biggest takeaway is, well, he's not retiring anytime soon, because I know that's something that was talked about a lot. He was asked about it, during media week at the Super Bowl. And, he did say, he's not done yet, and he did, quote his parents, something that they told him when he was younger. So that, the speculation was kind of squashed there, but this, makes it official. If the Chiefs are working on a contract for him, a new contract for him. And, listen, like I've been saying, the Chiefs, they want to ride this out for as long as they can. And, they're going to try to keep everybody together. They also working on a new deal for their general manager as well. So, they're trying to keep everybody together. And I know, and I've talked about this as well, they still have some key free agents that they want to try to bring back, like Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed. Negotiations are expected to end up be ongoing in the coming, or to start in the coming weeks. And this actually would make him the highest paid head coach in the NFL. So around 6 NFL coaches earn $15 million or more annually. His new deal will, exceed all of that and reach $20 million or more. Belichick, for the Patriots, he was believed to have earned around $25 million. Listen, I think if Andy Reid's going to be the highest paid head coach in the NFL, he deserves it. The success that he's been able to have, for this stretch now has been unbelievable. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, that has a lot to do with who's playing quarterback. Absolutely. But, Mahomes kind of took them to the next level, the Chiefs. Because, you got to remember, when he started out with the Chiefs, Andy Reid, they brought in Alex Smith to be the quarterback, and this was a team that made the playoffs before Mahomes. It's just they couldn't take that next step and get to a championship game, get to a Super Bowl. But then when they drafted Patrick Mahomes, they've made it to the AFC Championship game every single year that he's been the starting quarterback, and they've made it to 4 Super Bowls. They've won 3. And they're looking to continue that. They're looking to become the first team to ever win 3 Super Bowls in a row. And Andy Reid is a big part of that. Whether you say it's more about Mahomes, again, it's that conversation like, was it more Belichick, was it more Brady? Now it's kind of similar with, is it more, well, I think most of us would probably say it has a little bit more to do with Mahomes. But again, Mahomes got put in a great situation with Andy Reid. And of course, he didn't win a Super Bowl when he was with the Eagles. He did get to one. But the Eagles were a team that also made the playoffs regularly. It's just, again, could not get to, the promised land, couldn't get to, winning the big game. Again, lost to the Patriots in the, one Super Bowl he went to with the Eagles. But, yeah, I think what the Chiefs are doing here, this is, again, this is an indication that Andy Reid is not going anywhere. So any speculation on whether he's going to retire or not, that's something that could kind of be put to bed, at least for the moment, because, again, we don't know how long he's going to coach for. I mean, Mahomes, listen, he's got his whole career ahead of him still. He's got plenty of time. So it's going to be interesting to see, how long Andy Reid is going to stick around. And of course, another guy as well that people were talking about retiring is obviously Travis Kelce, but Kelce's still going to be around. And listen, the Chiefs did it this year with a team that a lot of people didn't really expect to get back to the Super Bowl. And they still ended up doing that. And now they're going to be even better next year, especially on offense, because if they could, whether it's they draft a wide receiver, they sign one, because there are some wide receivers out there that they could go after, this Chiefs offense is going to be better. So, and again, this was a year where, you looked at the Ravens as maybe being a team to go to the Super Bowl. At the beginning of the year, maybe the Dolphins with how, they were playing offensively to start off the year. The Bills, when they got hot at the end of the season. There were a lot of other teams that maybe you would look at certain points during the year, and you said they probably have a better chance of going further in the play. And even the Bengals, when they were healthy, there were a lot of teams that you would look at on the AFC side and say those teams might go further than the Chiefs, just because of what was going on offensively for the Chiefs. And just, they were able to persevere through it and find themselves back in the Super Bowl again. And like I said, next year they're going to be even better. So that's something that's going to be a concern for the rest of the league, and especially when you have Andy Reid coming back as well. Because at some point, Mahomes is going to have a different head coach, and we'll see how he adapts to that. I mean, I think he'll be fine. Mahomes is already an all-time great, and I just feel like he'll be able to work with whoever they bring in after Andy Reid. But again, we'll see. But at least for right now, Andy Reid is going to be sticking around. So that just kind of silences the retirement stuff, at least for the time being. And again, I mean, listen, we got a long way to go before next season. But listen, the Chiefs are already talking about three-peating. That's something that's on their mind, and they're going to try to work towards that. And listen, they got to try to bring back the guys on the defensive side of the ball, because the defense, again, was the strength of the team this year. And if you could bring most of those guys back, well, you got to bring Chris Jones. Getting him back is a must, because he's the best defensive player on their team. And then I guess try to figure out something with L'Jarius Sneed, and you go from there. But you bring back Chris Jones, and you rework. You try to bring in some wide receivers to help improve this. The pass catchers. I mean, this team is going to be, a force to be reckoned with once again next year. I mean, even without that, they still were able to win the Super Bowl. So, now imagine if they have a better receiving core next year. So that's something to keep an eye on. But, at least, again, we know that Andy Reid will be the Chiefs head coach for the foreseeable future. And listen, I mean, the conference is a gauntlet in itself. I mean, you're going to have to deal with all the teams I just mentioned. You got the teams in the AFC South. But you know what? Right now, the Chiefs are kind of in the class of their own, and then there's everybody else. And I know I've talked about, the one team that I think has the best shot to take them down, just because they're the only team that's, well, not they're the only team that's done it, but, they have the only active quarterback right now that has done it with this team. But other than, listen, it was a disappointing end for Josh Allen, disappointing end for Lamar Jackson going up against the Chiefs, because, the Chiefs weren't as loaded. And both those guys had home field advantage. And they just could not get the job done. Now, I don't want to, Now, I don't want to blame everything on them, on Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, because there's other factors that go into those games as well. I mean, you also had Tyler Bass missing a field goal. Why were the Ravens not running the ball more? Like, there's a lot of Zay Flowers fumbling, Diggs dropping that pass that Josh Allen threw up into the stratosphere. There's a lot of things you could point to, but besides the quarterbacks, and say that is, why they lost. But again, I mean, the Ravens, they could have put up, more points at home. They only put up 10 points. They could have definitely did more damage. It just didn't pan out. So we'll see what happens next year. But again, the Chiefs are going to be a better team. It's not like they're going to get worse. I mean, the receiving core will be better. They have to. That's something they have to address. I mean, Rashee Rice, he became a good player down the stretch for them. Their rookie wide receiver. Obviously you have Travis Kelce. Justin Watson made some plays for them. Mecole Hardman, obviously, was a big factor in the Super Bowl. But you want to add to that. I don't know what they're going to do with Sky Moore. I guess Kadarius Toney might be done with them, but we'll see. And listen, Isaiah Pacheco, he's been a good running back for them these last 2 seasons. So, it's just you got to add to the receiver core. That's what you got to do. Again, it's easier said than done, but, I mean, that's, I think, a need for them. So, and obviously you want to prioritize bringing back, some of your big free agents as well. So, again, we'll see what happens. But, the Chiefs aren't going anywhere. And I know that people are going to continue to complain about it. But, listen, this is something that you're just going to have to deal with. They're here, and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. So, it's going to be up to one of these other teams to knock them off, whether it's on the AFC side or whether it's the Chiefs get back to the Super Bowl and the NFC team does it. But, I mean, again, we'll just have to wait and see. But it's not easy to beat Mahomes in the playoffs. It just isn't. Only 2 players have done it. Only 3 teams have done it. 2 quarterbacks have done it. So it's. I mean, Mahomes already has more playoff wins than Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers. Like, it's just unbelievable what he's been able to do. But yeah, I mean, that's just how successful this team has been. And Mahomes was put in a great situation, like I said, with Andy Reid as the head coach and, sitting behind Alex Smith for a year. I mean, that worked. Listen, that worked out. That really worked out. I mean, from Mahomes' first game officially as a he did start the final game of the regular season in 2017, but as the full-time starter in 2018, I mean, they were off and running that offense. Let's see how many more they can win together. Let's see if they could become that first team to three-peat. I think they have a great chance to do that. I mean, again, it's hard to bet against the Chiefs right now. It really is. I mean, you could still do it, but listen, I wouldn't feel great about it. So, we'll see what they do next year. But again, they still got their head coach, and he's going to look to continue to build up his resume even more. So yeah, that's pretty much it when talking about this. So we're going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about A.J. Brown and him, talking about the trade speculation. Because I know that's something that's been in the news, but he kind of shut down trade rumors, and that is what we are going to discuss when we come back from our first break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to talk about A.J. Brown and him shutting down trade rumors. So I know that's been something that's been talked about, this year. Well, I guess now technically last year. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But regardless, that's something that's been discussed. And so he basically, kind of shut that down. He wants to stay in Philly. He talked about how he wants to be here. I mean, he really has been a key contributor to this team since they acquired him. It made Jalen Hurts a better quarterback. And listen, I understand people criticize Jalen Hurts, but it's with a lot of these quarterbacks. You want to surround your quarterback with as much talent as possible. You go back to Hurts' first season as the full-time starter, because I know back in 2020, when they benched Wentz and they went to Hurts, obviously, he got thrown in mid-season, showed you he could play a little bit. Then he became the full-time starter in 2021 when they moved off of Wentz. But, you had Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, you had Goddard. You were missing a number one wide receiver Devontae Smith looks like he can, now looks like he could be a number one wide receiver. But I guess, you wanted somebody else to complement Devontae Smith. And, so did I say somebody else? But whatever. The point is, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, that's been a great 1-2 combination. And the first year that Hurts was the full-time starter, they were running the ball a lot. And, then you get A.J. Brown, and the offense took it to the next level. And since A.J. Brown has come over, these first 2 years that he's been in Philly, 88 receptions in 2022 for 1,496 yards and 11 touchdowns. And then in 2023, he had 106 receptions for 1,456 yards and 7 touchdowns. So he really has been great since he's come over to Philly. And again, like I said, Jalen Hurts' numbers, got better from the first full year that he was a starter to now. In 2021, he had 16 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, 3,100 yards passing. Then it jumped up to 3,700 yards passing, 22 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. And then this past season, 3,858 passing yards, 23 touchdowns to 15 interceptions. So, yeah, he did turn the ball over a lot more this year, which is something to be a little concerned about. But, listen, the Eagles as a team, it just they weren't the same that they were the previous year. And, yeah, I guess you definitely are concerned a little bit where, you see Hurts is turning the ball over more. You go back to the playoff game, A.J. Brown didn't play. A.J. Brown got hurt in the game against the Giants in the regular season. He didn't even play in the game against the Bucs. So they definitely missed him. But, listen, this speculation has been going on for a while. You go back to the regular season game against the Bucs where you had A.J. Brown, on the sidelines with Jalen Hurts, and he looked like he was upset because he wasn't getting the ball enough. And that's kind of where some of that speculation on does he want to be here, that was one of the, reasons for that. But, he says he wants to be in Philly. And listen, Philly, they got new coordinators, Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. I think they're going to bounce back next year. I think Hurts has to decrease the amount of turnovers. 15 interceptions is not good. So they're going to have to figure that out. And also, we'll see what happens at the running back position because, you have DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, and Boston Scott. I believe they're all free agents. So, they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do running back-wise. And on top of that, you're still waiting on, is Jason Kelsey going to retire? Is he not going to retire? It's still up in the air on whether he is going to do that or not. So, yeah, the Eagles still have some question marks, going into the offseason. But at least they know that their wide receiver is he's all in. He wants to stay in Philly. And again, he's helped Jalen Hurts out. I mean, made Jalen Hurts a better quarterback. I mean, I know Jalen Hurts hasn't thrown a ton of touchdowns, but, I mean, in 2022, they were one of the better offenses in the league. And, they got to the Super Bowl. A.J. Brown scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. So, he's an important piece. And, this is going to be a big year for them. This is going to be big for Nick Sirianni because I know I talked about, the stuff that went on the sidelines when their security guard got banned from the sidelines and Nick Sirianni, had, problems, controlling his emotions and getting in fights with players and other coaches. So, the Eagles, we'll see if they're going to be able to bounce back. And, I think right now their biggest competition in the division is Dallas. And Dallas, played well against them both times. I mean, the first game, Dallas could have easily won. They left points off the board. The second game, Dallas just, they looked like the much better team. So, that's their biggest competition right there for the division is Dallas. I just still can't believe. I mean, the team was 10-1, and then everything, they really just fell apart at the end of the season. But, it happens. And, we'll see how they respond to it next year. If they could, find themselves back in the Super Bowl. Well, first you got to get to the playoffs, and then you go from there. But, I think, if Jason Kelsey officially retires, I've talked about it, that's going to really hurt them on the offensive side of the ball. Because I know Jalen Hurts has gotten some criticism on, well, look at all the talent that he has around him. What happens when that talent isn't there? What kind of quarterback is Jalen Hurts then? I guess we'll just have to find out if, he does lose a big piece on his offensive line. Because, again, it's not going to be easy to replace Jason Kelsey. It's not. But, at least, he's got all his pass catchers. The running game, like I said, we'll see what ends up happening there. Because also the other thing, too, is, and I'll talk about this tomorrow, so it looks like none of the big running backs are going to get franchise tagged. So that means they're all going to be free agents. And a lot of those guys are probably going to be, changing teams, I would say. So that's something actually we'll talk about tomorrow. And DeAndre Swift is one of those guys. So I don't know, are the Eagles going to bring him back? I mean, I thought Swift did a nice job for them, but maybe they are going to decide to look elsewhere. I know A.J. Brown's former teammate Derrick Henry is one of those running backs. Maybe the Eagles want to bring him in. That's a possibility, now that I think about it. I think that was probably, somebody else definitely said that. But we'll just have to see. But yeah, I just I still just can't wrap my head around the collapse that the Eagles ended up having. But yeah, so I actually want to go back. So we'll actually take a look at A.J. Brown's stats from the first couple of games because he really, I don't think he really did anything, and that's why he was, getting upset at Hurts that he wasn't involved. So the first game against the Patriots, all right, so he had 7 receptions for 79 yards. Okay, that's not, not bad. Against the Vikings in week 2, he had 4 receptions for 29 yards. So I can understand his complaints there. And then against the Bucs, he had 9 for 131. So he got more involved. Yeah, he had 14 targets. But yeah, I mean, again, early on in the season, it's just, I don't know. But yeah, then after that, after the whole thing with the Bucs, I mean, 131, 175 against the Commanders, 127 against the Rams, 131 against the Jets, 137 against the Dolphins, again, receiving yards. 130 against the Commanders again, 66 against Dallas, 1 reception for 8 yards against the Chiefs, 5 for 37 and a touchdown against the Bills, 114 against the 49ers, 94 yards against Dallas, again in Dallas, 56 against Seattle, 80 against the Giants the first time, 53 against the Cardinals, and then 9 against the Giants. But, of course, he got hurt towards the end of the game there. But, I mean, the first couple of games, wasn't a huge factor. And then, again, he gets into it with Hurts on the sidelines and, he had a big game, ended up having a big game there, and he went on a tear. But, you just never know with these receivers because a lot of them, they want the ball. They want the ball. They want to be impactful. But, I mean, listen, there's only one ball. And there's quarterbacks that are going to spread it around. So, but, at least, for Eagles fans and the Eagles themselves, they know that, their wide receiver, wants to stay. Because this is a good team. They just, for whatever reason, they fell apart. And, we'll see how they bounce back. And, if the end of the season was kind of a fluke. But, I mean, again, the division, it's really between them and Dallas. I mean, the Commanders are rebuilding. The Giants, I mean, they're still rebuilding, but they're, also, they're in the same spot as the Commanders, even though the Giants, still beat the Commanders. So, I mean, it's really going to be between Dallas and Philly. And then the grand scheme of things, you look at the NFC, it's going to be a better conference. I mean, I still think the 49ers are the class of the NFC. I mean, they came close to losing in the playoffs before the Super Bowl, but that ended up not happening. But, listen, the 49ers did all that talking leading up to the regular season game against the Eagles, and they really backed it up. Especially Deebo Samuel, because Deebo Samuel was the one that really did a lot of the talking. They backed it up. They walked into Philly, and 42-19 was the final score. So that changed the season for them. It really did. A lot of things just went wrong at the end. So again, we'll see what happens. But again, AJ Brown looks like he's going to be sticking around with this team. So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMC Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. And that is streamelements.com/GSMC And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, with that being said, we are going to take another break, our second break of the show. And then when we come back, we will discuss another wide receiver backing his quarterback, talking about Justin Fields and that he wants, Fields to, be the quarterback moving forward. And that is what we will discuss when we come back from our second break of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to talk about DJ Moore and him basically saying, listen, he wants to stick with Justin Fields as the quarterback. He wants the quarterback to be Fields next year for the Bears. So, basically he talked about how he thinks that Fields could be, is the best, in his eyes, is the best option for the Bears next season. The article that I was looking at, DJ Moore has dealt with a lot of quarterback changes. I mean, you go back and you look at, his time in Carolina. I mean, had Sam Darnold, you had Baker Mayfield, Kyle Allen, Cam Newton, P.J. Walker. I'm trying to think of who else. But yeah, I mean, there was just a lot of quarterbacks that DJ Moore had to, get the ball thrown to him from. And, now he gets traded to Chicago. He puts together a really good first season with them. And now all of a sudden, there could be a quarterback change. And, he doesn't want that. He definitely doesn't want that. And, I mean, listen, he's backing his quarterback. I mean, Justin Fields, I talked about last week that Justin Fields wants to stay in Chicago, but he knows it's a business and he just wants it all to be over. But, again, this is up to the Bears and what they're going to do. They're going to have the final say. But, yeah, DJ Moore, solid season with the Bears, his first season with the Bears, 96 receptions for 1,364 yards and 8 touchdowns. Played really well. I mean, even this year, though, when Fields got hurt, Tyson Bagent was the quarterback, during a couple games. So, pretty much on both teams, he's had to deal with that. But, and he also, he basically talked about the chemistry, with Fields. And, listen, he just wants stability there. He wants, consistency. And, if the Bears end up trading Fields and bringing in a different quarterback, then he's got to start over and build a chemistry with the new quarterback. The Bears also do have another top 10 pick. Now, what they decide to do with that pick remains to be seen. They could add another weapon, which I've said that, if they're able to do that, because you have some wide receivers there that you could go with. He did mention Marvin Harrison Jr. as a potential draft target. Now, again, the Bears could take Marvin Harrison Jr. with the number 1 overall pick, and then, we'll see what they end up doing, with I think they have the 8th or 9th pick. I don't know if they're going to do that, but they probably end up, it's either they're going to trade Fields or they're going to trade the pick. But if they end up doing both, they should not do that. I think that would be silly to do that, but it's on the table. It's possible. But yeah, I mean, listen, I get where DJ Moore is coming from, but ultimately it's going to be up to the Bears. What are they going to do? Are they going to, they'll stick with Fields, or they trade they draft a quarterback? It's got to be one of those two things. It can't just be you're going to do both. But I mean, listen, they had a nice connection this year, and he wants to. I think they both want to build off of that. Going into next year. I mean, the Bears. Listen, they started off flat. I mean, it looked like they were going to finish with one of the worst records in the NFL, and credit to them, they ended up finishing the season 7-10. I feel I think I might have said they finished 8-9 before, but yeah, they ended up finishing 7-10. Yeah, I mean, you start off. You lose to the Packers, the Bucks. You get blown out. This was a really ugly loss. Well, I mean, the Packers 38-20 was ugly, but losing 41-10, that was really bad. Then they had the lead against the Broncos. They blew that. But then they picked up their first win of the season. That's when things, I guess, somewhat started to turn around. And I think Fields then Fields got hurt the following week against the Vikings. But yeah, Fields had 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. DJ Moore had 8 receptions for 230 yards and 3 touchdowns. That was his breakout game. Actually, we'll take a look at all his stats from the season. Well, individual games. But yeah, I mean, the first game, 2 receptions for 25 yards, then got more involved, 6 receptions for 104, 3 for 41 in the touchdown against the Chiefs, 8 for 131 against the Broncos and a touchdown. Then, again, had 8 receptions for 230 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Commanders. He put together a solid season. That was a good trade for the Bears. And listen, I think right now they're in a position where they could be a decent team next year. And I think really it's going to all come down to what ends up happening at the quarterback position. Because if they keep Justin Fields and Justin Fields goes out there and plays really well, or if they draft a rookie quarterback and he ends up playing well with the supporting cast he has around him, the Bears could be a team that's, I would say they could definitely compete for a wild card spot. And I don't think that's crazy to say, especially with how the conference is. I still kind of like the Packers. I still like the Packers, the Lions, and, if a healthy Kirk Cousins comes back, I like all those teams in their division better than the Bears. But, again, that's just me. So we'll just have to, again, wait and see what ends up happening there. But, yeah, who's to say this team can't compete for a playoff spot? They definitely can. If you can add another pass catcher to go along with DJ Moore, with Cole Kmet, and you got some decent running backs there with Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, I think this team and the defense was improving. This team, I think, can be, underrated next year. But, again, they finished the season strong. Well, except when they lost to the Packers at the last game of the year. But still, compared to how they started, they definitely looked like a different team. And there's definitely a couple of games that they lost to the Browns. That game they could have won. They did only lose to the Packers by a score. But, listen, a couple games could have went their way, and their record could have been better. But, again, momentum, it doesn't really carry over into the next season. Next year's a new year. So, they just can't afford to start off slow. Bringing back Matt Eberflus, this is going to be a big year for him. And, we'll see if, the Bears end up, taking the next step. But this is a really big decision that they have on their hands. Because you got the number 1 overall pick. And you got Justin Fields, who you could either keep or trade. It's, it's one or the other. So, and listen, I know Fields hasn't been, great. I would say he's a better runner than he is a passer. Because, the rushing yards, in 2022, he was off the charts there. But yeah, look, his 3 seasons, 1,800 yards passing, 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. 2022, 17 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, and then 16 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. And he missed some time. He played in 13 games in 2020. In 2023, 2022, he played in 15 games. He played in 12 games in 2021. I just want to look up the rushing yards. If I can find it, because I have his Football Reference page up. Okay, of course. But, that's the thing, though. Like I said, you look at his rushing yards, and, again, he was unbelievable, doing that. It's just, but you got to be able to throw the football, too. But, we'll see, what ends up happening. Again, it's a big decision that's coming up. Oh, yeah, so here we go. These are his rushing stats. So he had 1,100 yards rushing in 2022. He only had 420 rushing yards in 2021. And then he had 657 in 2023. He had 8 rushing touchdowns in 2022. Yeah, so he, obviously he did miss some time due to injury. So that factored in. But, yeah, I mean, 2022, he was, a lot of big runs he had. I mean, you go to a couple games. I mean, against the Lions, he had big runs. The Dolphins game, against the Lions. There are some games you can go back to where he, he really, had some big runs. But obviously, again, you want him to improve as a passer. And, they went out and got DJ Moore, and that helped. But, again, I mean, the touchdown interception ratio is not really that good. You want to see that improve. But, again, I mean, it could be elsewhere. He could go to Atlanta. He could go to Pittsburgh. He could go to, there's other teams that he can end up on next year. It might not be necessarily with the Bears. So, that's something that, again, is going to be talked about for weeks until something actually happens. I mean, again, I'm not sure what the Bears, I mean, I guess, on one hand, it could be good from a financial standpoint because, again, you're, drafting a rookie quarterback. You have him under a rookie deal, for more years now, as opposed to Fields, who's, getting close to the end with that. Because eventually, you have to come to a decision on whether you're going to pay Fields if you end up keeping him. With a rookie quarterback, you're resetting the clock there. But then on the other hand, it's like, what DJ Moore's talking about. It's you already got chemistry, you got that rapport, and now you're going to have to figure it out again, which, I mean, again, I know it talks about how, he's been with a lot of different quarterbacks. I mean, this should be no different. You could get used to playing with the new quarterback. So, it's, again, I know there's some adjustments that he would have to go through if they end up, changing quarterbacks, but you're going to have to do it, if they end up doing it, because the Bears are going to have the final say. And listen, it really is a big decision. But I mean, if you trade that pick and you get a major haul for it, and you just continue to build around Fields. I don't know. I just feel like Matt Eberflus might not be the right guy. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, Fields, he hasn't been spectacular, since he, first started. Like I said, the rushing yards, that's been different. But, throwing the football, you want to see more. So, again, we'll just have to, that's just another thing that we'll have to, just wait and see on. But, yeah, so, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this. DJ Moore talking about Justin Fields. Again, this is something that's going to be continued to talk about until the final decision, ends up being made. But with that, we are going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about another quarterback, and that is Derek Carr and the Saints reworking his contract. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about the Saints reworking Derek Carr's contract. So, obviously, the Saints, their cap situation is not good. They have one of the worst. I think they did have the worst cap situation in the NFL. I mean, they were like $80 million over the cap. Obviously, the salary cap has been raised, so that kind of helps a little bit, but still, it's just like they are in they're in some cap trouble. And what they did was they restructured Derek Carr's contract to save $23 million in cap space. Again, they still have a lot of work to do, but that's at least a start. Carr signed a 4-year, $150 million contract with the Saints last offseason. So basically, the restructure involves converting part of Carr's $30 million base salary into a bonus, to help out with the cap situation. So this deal, he was going to come back anyways, but basically he'll be the quarterback next year and in 2025 as well. So if Carr was released, the Saints would be dealing with a significant cap hit. It would be $50 million, essentially, in dead cap money. Carr played in all 17 games for the Saints, got banged up a lot. I mean, there's games that he left early, against the Vikings, the Packers, and he finished the year with 3,878 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. And he played really well last couple of games of the season against the Bucs and against the Falcons, but the Saints fell a little bit short. And, listen, finding the right quarterback has been a problem for the Saints ever since Drew Brees retired. And, bringing in Derek Carr, I thought, was... I thought it was a good move, but again, Derek Carr, his last season with the Raiders, I thought wasn't great. I felt like he's kind of been, trending down a little bit, but, because you go back to his... Actually, 2021, when they made the playoffs, he almost passed for 5,000 yards, 4,800 yards passing. But, 23 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. Then in 2022, 3,500 yards passing, 24 touchdowns to 14 interceptions, and obviously didn't play the last couple of games. Josh McDaniels benched him. Jared Stidham ended up starting. And that's, again, something that happened with Russell Wilson. He got benched the last couple of games of the season, and Jared Stidham got put in. And again, those two teams are in the same division. I just find that weird that ended up happening. But just a weird coincidence. But yeah, with the Saints, 25 touchdowns, 8 picks, is okay. But the Saints, they got they're free agents. So Andres Pete, one of their offensive linemen, he's a free agent. Trey Turner, Jimmy Graham's a free agent, even though it's not that big of a deal. Not a lot of Rashid Shaheed, I know is on here as well. But I'm assuming he's going to be back. But yeah, listen, the Saints, next year it's another team. We'll see if they can figure it out, because this team was just really hard to figure out. And listen, this division was up for grabs. They lost some key games in the division, losing to the Bucs early on in the season, losing to the Falcons in Atlanta. Then, of course, towards the end of the year, they're a much different team. They played 2 good games. They dominated the Bucs in Tampa, and then, of course, they won, 48-17, the final game of the regular season against the Falcons. And I was saying, where was that all year? It's just, they ended up finishing with the same record as the Bucs. It's just the Bucs had the tiebreaker. They won 48-17 over the Falcons. Carr passed for 264 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and then against the Bucs they won 23-13. He went 24-32, 197 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. But this is a team, and they played better. Towards the end of the year, they won 4 of their last 5 games. They lost to the Rams. They only lost by 8. They got off to a slow start there. But they lost a lot of close games this year. A lot of close games. I mean, they lost to the Packers by a point. That was a game they were up 17-0. Packers scored 18 points in the fourth quarter. You lose 20-13 to the Texans, 31-24 to the Jaguars. That was that Thursday night. Foster Moreau drops the potential game-tying touchdown. I mean, they still had to kick the extra point, but yeah. And then, you lose by 8 to the Vikings. Derek Carr got hurt in the game. Jameis Winston gets put in. He was trying to lead them back, but it was just too much of a deficit to overcome. And I think Jameis threw a couple of picks in the game. Yeah, he threw 2 picks. You lose to the Falcons in Atlanta 24-15. I mean, they're driving, and then Derek Carr throws a pick 6. Or actually, he threw a pick 6, but also I think there was a Taysom Hill fumble in the game as well. So those are points that were left off the board. Also, I mean, they came back against the Lions. But the Lions were able to, win that game, and yeah, you lost to the Rams by 8. So I mean, there's a couple games in there where, I mean, especially the Packers game, you were up 17-0. Derek Carr gets hurt, and then the Packers, outscore you 18-0 in the second half. Really 18-0 in the fourth quarter. So there's games you could go back and look at this on the from the Saints season, and you could say, well, if they just won that game, they who knows what would have happened. They get into the playoffs. I mean, you're playing the Eagles, who Saints probably beat them. Saints probably end up beating them. The Bucs did. I mean, the Eagles couldn't tackle anybody. I mean, then Derek Carr gets into the second round. And you're probably playing the Lions. Yeah, you're playing the Lions, and who knows what would happen. But yeah, it was kind of too little, too late. And I know. When I talked about potential cap casualties, I know Alvin Kamara came up. Kamara is not the same player that he was, of course. So we'll see if they end up actually, cutting him, which would be interesting, and that would just add to the long list of running backs that are free agents. But yeah, I mean, listen, they got a lot of work to do with the cap situation, and I think right now, for them, Derek Carr is the best option. Is he the long-term answer? I mean, for the moment, he is with this contract, but, we'll see. We'll see how it pans out. I mean, listen, they finished the season strong, but like I said, momentum, it's going to be different now carrying into it's not really going to carry into next season. So, the Saints really can't afford to be inconsistent. I mean, their defense is getting older. A lot of the guys on that side of the ball are getting older. So, and I still, again, Dennis Allen, I talked about Matt Eberflus. I don't think Dennis Allen really is the long-term answer for them at the head coaching spot, head coaching position. I know they changed offensive coordinators, so we'll see, how that pans out next year. But, I mean, on paper, the Saints, they have a good roster. It's just, it's getting a little older, and they just were very inconsistent throughout the year. But like I said, Carr played great. The last 2 games he was solid. So, I mean, if you could get that Derek Carr, and that carries over into next year, and, you could, rework the defense a little bit. I mean, this team could be a team that, is competing for that division, because they definitely are. I know when I did a segment on teams that could be, trending up and trending down, the Saints were one of the teams that are trending down just because of their cap situation. But I don't know. I feel like it's I don't know if they're going to be well, let's see how they address this offseason, and then we'll go from there. But only time will tell. But again, the division, we'll see. I mean, the Falcons are going to have a different quarterback. The Bucs, they actually, the Bucs, speaking of the Bucs, they did release Shaquille Barrett, so that's one piece from the Super Bowl. He's going to be going to a new team. I saw Levante David. He doesn't want to play for a different team. He wants to stay in Tampa, so we'll see how Tampa can work out a deal with him. But, they still got to figure out things with Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield. So, I mean, right now, and then you got the Panthers, who are kind of, still, off to the side. Because right now you would say the Bucs, the Falcons, and the Saints, those are the teams that are going to be, really competing for this division. The Panthers, I mean, we'll see what kind of offseason they end up having. But only time will tell. But, I mean, the Saints, they were a team that was disappointing last year. They were, and they, I mean, listen, they still ended up finishing 9-8. It's just, you win one more game, you're in the playoffs, and the Bucs aren't. So, and obviously, Michael Thomas, he's another guy that just hasn't been able to stay healthy, and, he's far removed from, that couple-year stretch where he was, one of the best receivers in the NFL. Now it's just completely different. And again, like I said, you got Rashid Shaheed, you got Chris Olave as well. That's a good player for them. The Saints have weapons on this team. But again, it's just consistency. That was the issue with them. And again, one game would have made the difference. They would have been in the playoffs. Probably win a playoff game, get to the second round, and who knows what would have happened. But again, next year we'll see what ends up happening. But Derek Carr reworks his contract, and now the Saints got to continue to get that cap situation under control, and go from there. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it with the show for today. Some different topics. Like I said, I wanted to touch upon the running backs that it seems like none of them are getting the franchise tag. So, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift. And then, like I said, Kamara could be a cap casualty, so he's another running back that could be available. Also, Dalvin Cook is going to be out there. I mean, it's just so many of these guys that were, Austin Eckler, these are guys that were, the top running backs in the game at one point, to go along with Christian McCaffrey, of course. And now a lot of these guys are free agents. It's unbelievable. So, I mean, they're all going to be going different places. Josh Jacobs, another guy. But again, I don't want to talk about that too much because that's something we'll touch upon tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy how a lot of those guys are, out there. And I mean, I think most of those guys will get picked up, but we're going to see who is going to give them a contract. So, but yeah, I mean, we're getting closer to the, the start of the new league year. And of course, free agency is going to be something that we're going to talk about constantly, and the draft coming up. So, listen, football may be over, but we still got a lot of stuff to cover. And, make sure to tune in to my show as well as the other shows as well on the GSMC Sports Network. We appreciate it. So, so make sure to look out for, when I repost the 4 segments, in case you missed anything so you don't have to go back to the live stream and, skip around. Look out for some shorts that will be released later today. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. But, yeah, I mean, listen, like I said, football may be over, but there's still always, something, in the news that we could always touch upon. Yeah, so, tomorrow, like I said, we'll talk about the running back situation, what's going on there with all the guys that I just talked about, their free agents, and some other stuff as well. Obviously, I'll have to see what could be a topic to discuss. But, yeah, I mean, like I said, that is pretty much it for the show today. So, again, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.